Hi, I'm Mike. Welcome to my new YouTube channel. I'm a laser engraver from Weymouth in Dorset. Behind me you can see my machines. I have a couple of XTOOL S1s and a F1 Ultra, and I mainly make tumblers, coasters, keyrings, anything that can be engraved. I shall see what I can do with it. So for my first YouTube video I am going to show you how to set up the software in XCS to use a jig. These jigs are from L3D Accesseories. This one in particular allows me to do up to 20 different discs, and there's 3 different disc sizes that fit in this jig. So I'm going to show you how to set up the XCS software to make sure that you can just put this jig in, put your images in, center them on a guide and engrave away to make it really quick to do bulk engraving. So we're going to go over to XCS now and show you how to begin the process and take it all the way through to engraving an item. Hope you enjoy the video. Hopefully there'll be plenty more to come. So we've got this jig in the machine. At the moment I've just loosely tightened the screws. There isn't much play in the jig itself once it's screwed in, but there is a tiny amount, so I make sure that I push it all the way down to the right and to the bottom, just to make sure that when we're using it with repeatability it's always going to be in the same place. And then once I've got it in place down there, I will tighten up the screws so that the jig won't move. As you can see, this jig allows me to do 3 different size discs, up to 20 in each pass. So it'll take a 40mm jig, a 40mm disc, and it'll take a 30mm one and also a 23mm one, and I can do a mix of them at the same time. Although because they're at slightly different depths, you've got to be a little bit careful with your focus, but you have got a bit of room for error with these machines, so they will focus over a decent range. So once we've got the jig in, we'll move to XCS and show you how to set up a template, so every time you put this jig in, you've got everything in the right place for you. I should probably point out now that this mark on the jig is not an error in manufacture. That's me trying to engrave an aluminium disc at really high power and slow speed, therefore heating up the disc and melting the plastic. That's something I won't be doing again, and that you can learn by my mistake by not doing it yourself. So here we are in XCS. I've already focused the camera and taken a screenshot. We can start laying out the guides for our jig, which will enable us to do up to 20 items at a time. So the first thing we're going to do is make a circle by clicking the shape tool and find the circle, and it's going to be 40mm in diameter, which happens to be the default when you create a circle, so that's quite handy for us. And what we're going to do is we're going to pop that over the first of the discs we've placed in the jig, and then we are going to go and frame it, and then we will adjust to make sure it's in exactly the right place. We click the frame button, and then we'll head over to the machine and check how that's looking. So here we are in at the F1 Ultra, and we can see that it's almost spot on. What you can do while the framing is in action is just nudge with the arrows on your keyboard. Make sure you've got the object selected. And what we're going to do is, I think it just needs to go over to the left slightly. As I'm pressing the arrow keys, you can see the framing move. and we want it literally to be just touching the edges. I think maybe just down slightly as well, and that should be perfect. As you can see there, it's right on the edges of that disc, so when we put an image centered on that, it should be perfectly in the center. And then what we need to do is go back to XCS and do it for all the rest of the items, but there's a quick way of doing it so we don't have to do them all using this process, and I'm going to show you that now. So here we are back in XCS, and we're going to select the circle that we drew. We know it's in the right place. Now what I did before I put the jig in the machine was measured the distance between the spacings of the 40mm disc holders, and because Chris is very accurate with these, I know that the gap is going to be 1mm to the right to the next one, and then it's 5mm below it. So that means we can use the array feature to quickly create 20 circles which will act as our guides. So we go to applications here on the left and click grid array, and when the box pops up we know we've got 5 columns, so we can up that to 5, and we know that we want a 1mm spacing on the x-axis, and we've got 4 rows, so we up that to 4, and we know the spacing between the items is 5, so we put 5 in there and click done, and there you can see that we've now got 20 circles which will act as our guide for placing objects on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to ungroup all 20 of these. I'm just going to right click and click ungroup, and then I'm going to check them in columns first for accuracy. So what I'm going to do here is select the next column down, so now I have got all 4 selected, and I'm going to set them to output so that when I frame I can see the right and left edges. So I'm going to go back to the click frame and then go back to the machine. So here we are back at the machine, and it's framing those 4 in a column. I've moved the discs, no need to take another screen grab there, and I can see from that we're okay along the right edge, and by the time it gets to the bottom we might just be a smidge out, so when it comes to doing the rows we might have to move some. And what I'm going to do now is go through each column. I'm not going to record all of these because there's no point, it's just repeating myself, and I'm going to check each column and just slightly adjust them if I need to. I would imagine by the time we get over to the end it might be just slightly out, but not by much at all. You can see there over 4 columns that's out by less than 1 millimeter at the bottom there. So the adjustments are going to be minor, and we should be able to do them row by row and column by column instead of having to do each item individually. So I've been through and altered them all row by row and column by column, and now I'm just checking some at random just to make sure everything's nice and perfect. You can see the first one there is great, so we'll now move over to the next one, just changing the item that's output so we can frame them individually. And we'll see this next one over here, that's all lovely and centered, and we'll check another one just to make sure we didn't make any mistakes when we were doing it. Let's go for the one in the bottom corner. We'll output that one in XCS and click frame, and there we go. So I'm going to assume I didn't make any massive errors and that are all nicely lined up now. You can go through and check them one by one if you've got the time and you want to be absolutely sure, but I'm pretty confident in the process that will all be fine now. So let's go back to XCS and show how to finish the template and organize it so that when you come back, everything is in the right place. So before I engrave my logo onto one of these red discs here, I'm just going to show you the reason why you only need one set of guides, even though there's multiple sized items on this jig. First of all, I'm going to put the image in a different coloured layer. We'll pick yellow for that one, just so we can see it over all our items. It didn't move for some reason. Let's move to yellow. There we go. And now you can see that clearly over the items. So at the moment that image is sized to fit on the 40mm key fobs. I've just put a couple of different size ones in the machine, so we'll take another snapshot. So there we've got a 30mm one and a 23mm one. So I'm going to make this image smaller to what I think should fit on the 30mm one without the hole in it obscuring the image. So we're going to make it 20 just to be sure. And then we can move that over here and it should snap to the center. And because they're circles, it doesn't matter which size circle we've got in there, the center is always the center. So we only really need that one set of guides. And in fact, it's easier getting it lined up if we zoom in and move across. When you've got a bigger image to center it on, it's much easier to see the blue snap lines. So if we move it off and move it back in there, we can see we're centered by the snap lines on there. And there we go, we can let go and that one would engrave nice and central. And the same for the smaller one. Let's make that 15 because it's a 23mm and we want to make sure we don't. There we go, snap to the center. Bob's your uncle. And there we have it. We can save that now as our template. So we've got 23, 30 and 40mm disc template for the F1 Ultra. Save. And next time I have a batch coming in, I can just open up that file, pop the jig in, make sure I've located it to the bottom right, and it'll be very easy to line up all the images I want to go for, and away we go. Here we go, I've loaded up an image and centered it on one of these, and I'm just going to quickly run an engrave on it. Looking like it's coming out well. Very quick. F1 Ultra is amazing. These would take a couple of minutes or more on my S1s with the IR module. There we go. Lovely and central. That image is not quite a circle, but it is perfectly central, and that will be the same across all of them. And there we go. Hope you enjoyed this first video from me. See you again soon.